What's Your Work Fit is sponsored by Hudson Davis. Start your brand's marketing and communications journey today at hudsondaviscommunications.com. I'm Dan Smolin. I built a successful executive career in marketing and communications before becoming a top headhunter and founding my own executive search firm. Now get this, every day, mainstream media runs stories in which old school bosses and thought leaders frame your work and workplace issues in ways that are often divisive and unmeaningful. And that's just crazy. The time has come for you to answer the question, what's your work fit? So that your work and career fit who you are, how you want to live, and what you want your lasting contributions to be. What's your work fit? It answers your questions and tackles the issues that keep you up at night about advancing your career in this time of workplace revolution. So let's get started. Hey, good day, everyone. Dan Smolin here from What's Your Work Fit. Thank you so much for joining me today and getting 2024 off to a great start. I want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to all of you who have become part of the What's Your Work Fit community. And you have a job to do as ambassadors, and that is to help me extend it even farther. First of all, if you haven't done so already, I ask that you follow us on the platform of your choice. As you know, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook Live, and on the What's Your Work Fit YouTube channel. Here are what the buttons look like on those various platforms. Click onto them, and then you will never miss future live shows or our other pre-recorded content and other offerings. One more thing I want to say about building this community, and it's a simple ask, and that is to tell 5 friends about What's Your Work Fit. If you truly enjoy what we're doing here, what we've done here since October of 2022, tell 5 friends who you think will benefit from it. You will be in my gratitude. Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce our returning guest, Denise Brouder from SWAYworkplace. Hello, Denise. How are you?
Dan, good morning. How are you? Great to see you again.
Great to see you. Let me tell you a bit about Denise. Denise is founder of SWAYworkplace, and she is a globally recognized flexible work skills expert. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Happy 2024, Denise.
Is that me when I was younger?
Baby New Year's on Ritalin. I was tasked to, do a looking forward piece about 2024. And the thought was, how about the Edvard Munch painting The Scream? And instead of the scary figure, we'll put a colicky baby out front. That would be a perfect metaphor for, I think, how people feel about 2024. What do you think?
I think you've nailed it. And that is a visual of what everyone is probably feeling on the inside right now. We just want to let it all out.
You just want to let it all out. And by the way, as a parent of a former colicky baby, it's real and never ending. But you know what? You get very brave and you find ways of overcoming what seems insurmountable. My daughter would never settle. I found that running the vacuum cleaner calmed her down. And when that was no longer practical, I would hold her tight against my chest with her back towards my chest, and I would hum into her neck, sort of like an om, and little by little she learned how to calm herself. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool.
We all have a thing. We all have that thing.
We all have that thing. I want to get right to business and get to the question which this week is posed by Eric. Thank you, Eric, for sending this in. We'll get right to it. Eric is a product support manager at a New York area-based health tech firm. And for the past couple of years, he's crushed it. He's exceeded management's expectations. And he says it was easy to succeed and to be recognized favorably. And he adds, the part of the day that included work felt like fun.
Mm,
But, and there's always a but, in the fall of 2023, Eric lost his mojo and something
mm,
felt different to him, and not necessarily in a good way, Denise.
yeah.
What's more, he began to question the purpose of the work that he does, wondering, is my role fulfilling me beyond the paycheck?
Mm,
So Eric's stuck, and he knows from conversations that he's had that he's not the only one out there feeling that way. So, Denise Brouder, Eric asks, why do we feel so stuck at work? Let's get this conversation started. Why do we feel so stuck at work?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of my fellow redhead over here. We're the 1% of the world.
He looks
Lo-
kind of Nordic, not Celtic. So, you know,
hey, us gingers got to stick together wherever it is that we come from.
right.
This is just an excellent question, Dan. I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days, and the first thing or the thing that keeps repeating to my mind as I kind of reflect on this is this saying that all those that wander are not lost. And we feel like in this kind of Instagram kind of a world of this instant and immediate satisfaction, gratification, that everything has to be perfect all the time and all at once. And that's just not the nature of reality. So all those that wander are not lost to me means that there are times when things are going according to plan, and there are times when they are not. But in the times when they are not, when we are in that more uncomfortable space where our careers are not linear,
Mhm.
it is the greatest time for us to learn. So my first instinct here, Dan, and I've been in this situation myself a few times,
Mhm.
to kind of just step back and take a deep breath and settle into where you are and look at what's happening around you. Because we have to look at the data points and the events that are happening that are causing us to feel like that to learn.
Mhm.
Because that's where we're going to get the insight to make a decision to move forward or to move left or to move right.
Mhm.
Not always a bad thing to feel like that. It is our natural selves telling us there's something else out there for us or something else that we need to change about our work style.
So there is something going on out there, and as Eric said, it's not just him. And in pre-interview yesterday, I had mentioned to you a situation where my wife and I, in renting space in a vintage clothing shop in a very upscale neighborhood in Northern Virginia, and working with the shop owner, she's done everything right. She, created a beautiful shop, and she created wonderful merchandising and a wonderful experience. And yet she was lamenting the fact that sales were not where she wanted them to be in fourth quarter. That something was going on, and she was so vexed because the economy's doing okay and the stock market's rebounding, and it looks like we're going to beat the the downturn in the economy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what
Mm.
I said to her is, maybe we're not looking at the right measures for what's going on out there. What kinds of things are you picking up on, Denise, that are certainly happening in the workplace, certainly happening in the dynamics between people who work, but then go beyond the workday, go beyond, to the other part of the 24 hours of the day?
So my insight on this comes from the work we've done over the last couple of years, which is
Mhm.
kind of getting in the room of people who are on the line in their companies, making the donuts every day and working with them and really kind of understanding what questions are they asking, what are they not asking, how are they feeling. So we've definitely kind of felt this idea, this kind of malaise that has been building up over the course of last year. So the first thing to mention, Dan, like when you look at like the stock market and
Mhm.
jobs numbers, and these are metrics and markers that are outdated and don't reflect at all the pulse of how the everyday people are doing.
Right.
It's a collective number that used to mean something when there was equality and access to opportunity, but that's very, very, very much changed now. So if you peel back that great GDP quarter number and you peel back those jobs those numbers and you look underneath, you find a very unsettled group in the workforce. And to get really on the inner side of what we feel is kind of happening just by the way people are talking about this is we cannot forget the enormous experience that we've just had over these last couple of years, this impact of being disconnected from our coworkers and being at home more. It is an enormous psychological, emotional event that busted open inertia and allowed us to examine the way that we feel about our work and has left us questioning what's next. So the way I kind of visualize that is I think that in our traditional way, our work used to be our identity. So like, hey, man, I'm Denise. Nice to meet you. What do you do, Denise? I'm an accountant. So you've put me in this box and you kind of understand and relate to me. And I think that that relationship held for a long time. But now the relationship is fractured. And I believe what's emerging is we're no longer looking at work as our source of identity. We're looking at work as something that we do to discover who we are. And I think that...
And you describe that as work as a lifestyle. So what is that?
We've been chewing on this since you and I first met in 2019, when it just became such a revelation to our team. We felt that work is emerging as a lifestyle choice, which is such a fundamental flip from the way that we used to come out of college, get a job, work through it, retire. This kind of linear process of life is completely been upended. And we're kind of resurfacing through and finding more value and meaning in our work as a lifestyle. So it is a lifestyle choice.
Your fellow Garden Stater, Stuart Katz, says or asks, do people who work primarily remotely have a shorter fuse with regard to feeling stuck at work, or is there no difference compared to people working co-located?
I think that the triggers are different, but I think the emotion is real in both cases. And a huge component of working primarily remotely is the lack of feedback and the lack of spontaneous communication that can happen with coworkers. And it's oftentimes in the more informal ways, like the grapevine, what you hear in the cafeteria, is how you kind of learn, ooh, what did that person say? Or, ooh, what's really happening? That allows us to feel kind of connected into what's happening. So when you feel disconnected and you're transactionally working through your day, you're not getting that kind of informal connectivity to your coworkers. And sometimes you can feel like you're stuck. But conversely, I think that can very much also happen if you're entirely in person, but it would be an entirely different trigger when you're not feeling kind of growth in your role, or you have a bad manager, or you have a toxic coworker. Because at the end of the day, Jen, all that we have are our relationships. That's it. Everything else is just inanimate objects. It's only our relationships. It's the quality of the relationships we have that give us a sense of joy in our work and our life.
You know, I've so enjoyed the comparability of experience over the past 5 years with you, almost 5 years. Pre-pandemic, pandemic, post-pandemic, and then this netherland we're in right now, which is at times dissociation and at times aggrievement. And I wanted to ask you, what is the C-suite least prepared at this current point to deal with in terms of the stickiness that's going on right now that is keeping top talent in the workplace from continuing to thrive, be engaged in work and in the workplace?
A revolt. I do.
A revolt?
Yes. And what I mean by that, and it is, to me, I feel like that is the idea of like RTO and back into the office. And there was a stat I heard on CNBC that in an interview just yesterday that I think is in a 2025 or 2026, 2/3 of senior leaders think they're going to be, people are back in the office 5 days a week, which means they believe that they have the power to create the conditions of agreement and consensus to move everyone back in to a historical model of work. And maybe you can, under the duration of like, I need to get paid because I have to pay my mortgage, or like we're kind of entrapped in this model of work, but there is a simmering growth of the desire for a sense of freedom in the way that we work that will create over time, I believe, this sense of revolt against that kind of traditional mindset in favor of more flexibility, which not only is a more social and harmonious way to work, it's also a more intelligent model of work for the modern era. And until we get to that point, we're going to continue, I think, to fight in the sandbox. So we just cannot dismiss, you cannot put the flame out, you can't put it back in the bottle. This sense that flexibility allows me to make better decisions about when, where, how I work, and ultimately why I work. It's just too important to people. So that will become some way of a revolt at some point in our near future.
You brought up CNBC, the bane of my existence sometimes. Yeah. And you made me think about the standard measures that usually pop up on the screen at 8:30 in the morning on big news days. You know, maybe it's new hires, maybe it's what the employment rate is.
Mm.
Why are we still using measures that were invented 100 years ago that no longer apply to somebody who's perhaps working in some place other than in a co-location, maybe side hustling like my wife and me, perhaps you, because I bring this up, Denise, because I think sometimes where we get in a lot of trouble is like our friend who runs that shop in Northern Virginia, but the economy is great and unemployment is low. Yeah, well, duh, I can't make my mortgage. Or, yeah, that was great until I had to start paying back my student loans again.
Mm-hmm.
We have to adopt a different language for how we're doing. Where do we start? Do you have any ideas?
Well, I think it's important to recognize, Dan, like the continuity of these metrics and the language. Its purpose is to keep the current regime as is.
Yeah.
It keeps power and influence and decision-making with the people that it's traditionally been with. So of course, you and I even talk about this today, we are rallying against the norm. We are looking to shift and add to the movement. That is a direct threat to the way it always was. And behind the way it always was are his power, influence, capital flows, and whatnot that have given structure to our traditional world of work. There's always going to be this tension, and there's always going to be a reporting of those traditional metrics that we know no longer fit. So your point about like not being able to, like these younger kids coming out burdened with this enormous kind of school debt, not being able, like how many millennials don't even think buying a home is in their future? Our birth rate is way down. There's so many huge trends that are emerging around us as a result of the way the economy has kind of been shaping the last couple of years. So sure, the stock market might be off the charts and GDP may be off the charts, but who? For who? So my point is the vast majority of people that are living day to day are the ones that are questioning, if all of this material stuff isn't even within my reach, then what else can I change and feel empowered to change? And that can be the way that I work.
I want to ask you if you think social media and other influences have exacerbated this stickiness that we feel, where we perhaps feel we're not getting ahead or we're not being heard, or perhaps it's within us, I'm not good enough. And how do we begin to have a conversation with our employer or perhaps the people we do business with that gets us more to what I call project-based outcomes, as opposed to working the clock and what does my year look like and what's my annual salary and what's my pay pack look like? Because I think sometimes despite our best intentions, that works against us.
So on the social media front, most things are a double-edged sword. Yeah. It's how do you use it? What do you see? What do you see when you look at this? But it can be such a disaster in painting this picture of perfection that we know is not real for the vast majority of people. But when you're looking at things so fast and you're accumulating this vision and view of other people, their opportunities they have, the things they're working on, it may not necessarily be truth. And you can internalize that as, I'm not good enough. I'm not successful enough. I didn't get that promotion. I'm not making enough money. I'm not in the right spot. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that could put a lot of unreal pressure upon yourself. But the other positive side of that, Dan, is the fact that we have been creating new language. Mm-hmm. And we are feeling more empowered to use this language To not say, I want to work from home, but to say, here's a constructive argument. Here are the 5 things I know I am a better person when I work at home and my contribution to the team than if I wasn't. So providing that new language is so important. That's how we actually make progress. It's powerful stuff.
I want to get to a couple questions, and then I want to
Sure.
ask you about Sway and what you're
Yeah.
hearing from your members.
Yep.
First, get to Steve King. Hey, Steve. He says, I spent time over the holidays with a number of Gen Z relatives, and they talked about work as a lifestyle. How about that, Denise? A small sample, but they definitely agree with Denise. That's really encouraging.
Well, Steve King is an icon in the world of research. Whatever he says, you can bank on it being true. He just
Yes.
has an ear for these things. But that's 100% it, Dan. Like, it is the lifestyle choice and the freedom that comes with it that is so lucrative and can be an enormous talent strategy if embraced by the corporate side.
Now you've got younger kids than I have. I have one kid. She's going to be 23. Your kids are a little bit younger, but I would imagine having the um, work as a lifestyle frame has created more happiness than not in your household. In that
Mm-hmm.
you get to see your kids and their sports. Your son, one of your kids plays football, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, football, softball, all kinds of sports.
That's golden. And if it happens during what would normally be the workday, um, that creates happiness. That creates a happiness element in work as a lifestyle, I would imagine.
But that is our lifestyle choice.
Right.
So, somebody that's in a different stage of their lifestyle looks very different. But on that point, Dan, the happiness of being able to work flexibly as a lifestyle, it's not just for me. The real magic comes because my husband works just as flexibly. So I think that the power flexibility to level the playing field is not about getting me to work, it's about getting my husband home. And that's how we use flexibility to level the playing field and create the lifestyle that suits us right now. At that time is golden.
The interesting thing about what you just described. So my wife is a public school teacher who is on the horizon of retiring probably in the next 1 to 2 years. But during the Christmas break, she wasn't a teacher. She was an entrepreneur running her vintage clothing business.
Mhm.
And I'm doing my thing, but I'm also the fulfillment manager for her. So she gets a sale. I'm the one who's putting it together and getting it in the system. So having that freedom allows us to share something quite incredible. Not only is it remunerative, it's also enjoyable, and it brings us closer together, which is another interesting aspect of this that may or may not be lost on the C-suite. I hope they're starting to recognize it.
What you just described is the most important element of this whole shift. It
Mhm.
is so important. The ability to shape your life around your work and your work around your life. But it introduces, in today's world, risk.
Mhm.
And C suite, their job is to mitigate risk, not add it on until we can prove otherwise, which is why this new language and empowering people with this language is really important, and understanding frames of reference for how to demonstrate and do flexibility well so we can shape our work and live work as a lifestyle. I mean, that's the stuff that makes life worth living,
Right.
not just the paycheck.
Christine Passo, good friend, says,
Mm.
when I felt stuck at work, I was also stuck within myself. Interesting point. She learned being stuck was bigger than she thought and not one dimensional. Let's talk about that. I think it's easy to blame the job,
Right.
but none of us have uncomplicated lives, especially if we have children, especially if they're of a certain age and you're worried about getting them tuition for college, or
Yeah.
whatever that might be, or maybe worrying about your retirement. There, we don't live one-dimensional existences, and work is not the be-all and end-all. Great comment, Christine. Thank you. Anything to add on that,
I
Denise?
mean, and that's a whole nother show. I don't know. That's a whole nother show. But can I actually read you a quote? Can I respond to that with a quote from a poem that I've been really deciphering that helped me answer that question for myself?
Let me bring her comment back up. Here you go. Go ahead.
It's from T.S. Eliot. Do you know that poet, T.S. Eliot? He's
Of
an Irish
course.
poet, actually.
You're right.
Obviously, an Irish guy. I know him. We shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know that place for the first time.
Oof.
Hugely profound quote that I literally, I've written it down and I'm continuing to unwind what that means. But to Christine's point, it all starts with us.
Yeah.
So Eric, the earlier gentleman, if he was to leave his job, he's just taking his problems with him, very likely, unless it's something structural about where he is. You got to start with yourself. And that's what this interesting phase of life is, this era that we are in. It's about a sense of self-discovery and positioning in our work and our life and reevaluating what that means. It's tough stuff, it's deep stuff, but it's worthwhile.
Yeah, and then we got this Oracle study. So this is really the magnitude of it, that 75% of knowledge workers feel stuck. I think there's some statistical significance in this finding. What do you think?
Yep. I mean, it's no longer an anomaly.
Oh.
It is present day trend. And listen, Dan, we say feel stuck. I say an opportunity to learn something about us right now.
Yeah, that's the time to really pay attention. I agree with
Yeah.
you there. May I get to one of your slides? Because I think this is one where I nicked it off of your website, and it was how 2023 differs from 2024. And I was really struck by these words. And I'll tell you afterwards where my eye went to first. But I want to give you an opportunity to describe what's going on in this framing shift that you have arrayed here.
Where this came from, honestly, I wrote this, my handwriting probably should be improved. I wrote this on a piece of paper a couple of weeks ago when I was up early in the morning, getting ready for the end of the year and thinking about it and noticing, Dan, that in our community, we talked about this a little bit, in our community, a future of work, I just felt like over the course of the last Q3 and Q4 of last year, people stopped talking materially about this movement. And I know you're one of them for sure. It's like, and I talked to a lot of people just step back, and then there was this void of the conversation, and that fuels the movement, that fuels change. And I just was really reflecting on what I was seeing around me and what have I learned from my work over the last couple of years. And I just cannot escape me that words are so powerful because it gives us direction. And then so I really thought, well, what are the 5 things that I learned by working with people that are stuck and want to be unstuck, or that are doing it well? And how are they talking about their work and the way that they're living their lifestyle? And these are the 5 that I came up with. Do you want me just to do a quick explanation of what they are?
By all means.
Okay. The first huge thing, and at Sway, we've actually deleted hybrid out of all of our work and only speak about flexibility, which to me was always the end point. Hybrid is a temporary word. Yeah. It is a signpost that just said, hey, stop here, go this way. At some point, we're never going to mention hybrid because hybrid implies 1 foot in the old, 1 foot in the new. And you can't live like that. But we are moving towards this flexibility, disconnected from location, disconnected somewhat from the clock, living and working flexibly as one, a sense of true flexibility. And for me, I feel like that's going to be a word you're going to start seeing a lot more in place of hybrid. The second thing that I thought was really important to note was the difference between next and now. And this came from my view and research around mindfulness as a workplace skill. And we are so overwhelmed by pings, notifications, taps on the shoulders, late night calls, that we are so busy thinking about what's coming next that we're forgetting what's happening now. And the idea of kind of slowing down long enough to really listen to your coworkers and listen to your own ideas is what we need to contribute creatively, to be able to contribute value in our org. So instead of thinking about what's happening next, what's happening right now around me? And how can I learn and how can I lean in? So it's that pace of slowing down. The third thing was going from sync to async. And this is like the cornerstone building block of the future of work. I mean, there's nothing bigger than this.
Huge.
And I'll tell you, Dan, that at the beginning of last year, when we worked with people, I would ask groups, Who's familiar with synchronous versus asynchronous and what it means? And it used to be 15% of the people would say, I got it, and the others did not know. And now it's organically over 50%. Doesn't mean that people are working asynchronously, but doesn't mean they know what it is. So again, language is coming in.
And it doesn't mean that they're 100% asynchronous. It just means that that's where the value frame is going. This is where I'm happiest. This is where I'm most productive.
Oh.
This is where I can be head down and get the job done.
You know, we spend our time and we invest our energy, and being more aware of that is what async gives the benefit of. We don't have to be in person, on the phone, on a video call, in a room to do all of our work. We can bifurcate that and separate by understanding the nature of the work that we do.
Can I interrupt a second?
Yeah.
Last year I had on Dr. Betty Johnson as a guest, and we talked about, you know, the terror moments of being synchronous, and especially on Zoom calls. And she says, have you ever noticed that people do something called surface acting? They're performative. They put on a big smile on their face, even if they're not necessarily speaking. But if their tile is up in the array of 50 other tiles, they want management to know that they are.
Yep. And there's nothing behind it sometimes.
Right.
So is the case. And the worst when your coworkers know that, and it just feels disingenuous.
Right.
The worst. Right. So the next one then is job and lifestyle. And this is another for me. I think this is going back to the first question that came in from Eric, and we're thinking about, you know, you're hired out of college to do a job. Is a defined box that we sit in nice and comfortably with certain conditions. Like, you will give me money and I will do this on your terms. And we think we've seen in the last couple of years, everything from flexibility to digital nomadism. People are searching for more of a lifestyle choice to fit the season of the life that they're in. So flexibility equals freedom. So lucrative. We talked about that a little earlier. Yeah. And I think that we're moving away from thinking about, I'm going to apply for a job, to what's the lifestyle I want to live. That's going to help me determine my next move. And the biggest one, of course, is the last one, which is inertia to intention. And, you know, inertia just runs everything. It is so hard to make even small change, but certainly large scale change. So
and I have found, not necessarily due to the scale of the company, it could be a startup and there could be inertia.
Humans are not designed and wired for change. We're designed and wired for the opposite, to keep us safe, go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can kind of follow up the ranks there. But I think that the experience of the last couple of years, we're wrangling with getting comfortable with this idea that, I can work intentionally. I can be intentional about the work that we do. And I think that as we are shifting the way that we work, which is being totally accelerated by AI, we're seeing it kind of seeping in all parts of our lives, it's kind of going to help us question, well, why did I actually ever do this the way that I did it? Right. And I think that we're going to find ourselves questioning these fundamental things that we've never even thought to question before. So we're going to become more curious and more intentional about the way that we work and the way that we shape our lives and our days. So that's what to me, that's how my best hope for 2024.
First of all, boys and girls, this is why you keep a notepad, a spiral notebook by your bedside with a pen, totally analog, so that at 3 o'clock in the morning, like Denise, and you can't sleep, you write this stuff down, because these are golden insights right here. So where did my eye go first, Denise?
Okay, if I'm a betting person,
yeah. Did
you go to next to now?
Yes.
Oh, yes, score.
Yeah, you know, you and I are sibs from a different mother. I am convinced we think so much alike. But here's why. You know, one of the discussions that has popped up on LinkedIn over the last 6 months is, does the term future of work really resonate anymore? And I've been toying with the now of work, which is, I've got a mission to do today. I've got a mission to address. I've got a task to fulfill. That's more now than anything. But even beyond the utility, there's the mindfulness aspect. When we operate in the now, when we're mindful, we lower our heart rate, we regulate our respiration, we We probably reduce our inflammation. We're less triggered. And we're happier. I love the word now because I don't want to go beyond now during the calendar year 2024. It's too terrifying. I'm okay with now.
That's good. That is good.
And I'm wrestling with, future of work's important because people understand it, and they understand it's full of possibilities and Buck Rogers and new toys and new ways of being. And I'm fine with that. But the now of work to me feels much more important.
Yeah.
Because as we spoke yesterday, 2023 was all about the operational and logistical aspects of work, how we do it, with what tools, where we do it, when, and perhaps with whom. But the now of work, man, it gets to the why. Why are we doing this? Why am I investing X number of hours a day as part of a 24-hour day to do this? Why is it this? Why should it be this? Why? Why, Denise?
I gotta go. I tell you, but I gotta go. But that's also the inertia part down here. So a lot of these phrases are kind of interdependent.
Right.
And Dan, on the now thing, yoga is just one example. It's exploded in popularity. There's every type of yoga. I mean, there's even goat yoga, which is when goats, I don't even know, climb on your back. I don't know what they do, but there's just all ways of people having a desire to become more present. And I saw this actually, and I was flying home to Ireland over the summer, and I was on a United flight, and I noticed as I was kind of scrolling through the entertainment cards, one of them was a meditation exercise. I was like, wow, look at that.
Oh, for you to do on the plane?
On the plane. And I was like, whew, mindfulness has become mainstream.
I hope you were upgraded to business class. It'd be a little hard to be in a lotus position in those coach airline seats.
You don't know how flexible I can be, but
wordplay
on flexibility. But there is a surge in people just kind of wanting to get out of the sense of a rat race and just become a little more present in the moment. And the truth is, Dan, the end result is we do better work faster. I want to get to some other comments that were submitted pre-roll, and I want to get to Tom Langtree, who is so spot on. He goes, a lot of workplace dissatisfaction may result from, get this, a mismatch between pace and people. Oh my God, I love that. And Tom is like me, a Madison Avenue ad agency escapee, and the pace at the agencies where I worked at was supersonic. Yeah.
And especially in the New York area, if you came from another place, and when I entered the New York agency space, I'd come from Minneapolis, where I'd worked for 2 years. And what was the first thing they said to me? Speed it up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Go faster, go harder. Right.
Unbelievable.
But Dennis, this is excellent. But in a situation like that, like your Madison Avenue experience, with this gentleman here too, companies, I think the mentality has been, in traditional ways of working, they're hiring you for a piece of you.
Yeah.
But today's world, we want to bring all of us. I think that could be the mismatch. Yeah, because what are you going to do? I'm going to milk every last slice of your particular skill set by going harder and faster. Yeah. At what expense to me personally and my own kind of sense of peace and balance? And I think that could be a lot of what this mismatch is that we're experiencing, the stuckedness.
So I want to get to Helena, who brings up Arthur Brooks and Oprah Winfrey's new book on happiness. And she describes 3 components: enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose. Being stuck has to do with the lack of one or more. Amen, sister. I really like that. And they don't have to be independent. That's the really good thing here. I can be fully satisfied with my outcome and feel tied to my purpose. If I'm not enjoying it, it may not be worth it. And if you take out another 1 or 2 of these, perhaps that's the case as well. So good on Arthur Brooks and Oprah for addressing this.
Yeah, that's definitely I love that, and I wonder too. It's interesting. I used to strive to be happy. I
Yeah.
used to think that was the goal, and I think that my own realization the last couple of years is to really to strive more for a sense of peace and balance in the way that I see and go through my days. Because from there comes a more sustainable sense of joy, gratitude, happiness, and all the other flavors of love that we experience comes for me from a grounded sense of balance and peace, which I believe flexibility can give to people.
You know what, we Americans, and I'm not speaking necessarily of you because you've adopted this land, but
Mm,
the ones of us who were born here, I think happiness is the construct that we've all tried to live to achieve, even if it's unreasonable. Now I bring this up, Denise, because knowing that you grew up in Ireland,
yep.
and knowing that Gallup has done a lot of research on happiness, what really interested me is that when they got to their subjects in the EU,
Mm,
in Ireland, in the UK, and in Asia, what they heard more of was a quest for contentment. That happiness is a little too frilly. That
hmm
contentment is okay. This is okay. I'm not I'm not joyfully showing my teeth and excited, but everything is okay. What's it like in Ireland? Do the Irish strive to be happy, or is contentment more of a goal?
Well, well, Ireland is the land of saints and scholars. Is a rich, rich, rich history of happiness. But I'll tell you, I can give you my own experience. That is when I moved to America from Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
The first Christmas that I lived in America, I was floored. I was absolutely shocked because in Ireland and in the European area, Christmas is like this build up and this 2 week celebration of
Yeah,
family and togetherness and time. In America, it was the day and half of Christmas Eve.
yeah,
And I had such culture shock.
yeah.
Um, by experiencing that because there is such an emphasis in the US on work and attainment of work and
Right.
quality of work and climbing the ladder, which is noble in the economic prosperity. And that's why everyone admires the US for those reasons. But it does come at a price.
A steep price indeed. I wish this could go on forever. If you know me, you know how much I love and respect Denise because what a dear friend. But more importantly, I learned so much when I get on these sessions with you. It's just absolutely thrilling. As Denise mentioned, we go back 5 years, and it's interesting when we do meet up and we talk about where we left off, and um, you know. The amount of change that we both have witnessed in work and in the workplace is astonishing.
Mm.
And I don't know about you, I am loath to make any predictions as to what's going to happen this year. It's really merely a hope that we find our bravery,
Mm.
because it's going to be, probably going to be a very tumultuous year. Um, and to stay centered and stay in the now, as you had on your chart.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a difficult time right now with kind of wars around the world. And
Yeah,
I think there's like a very high percentage of countries around the world are holding major elections this year. So there's going to be a lot of possible shifting of power around the
right.
world. And there's going to be a lot of noise. And I live by the mantra that less is more.
Yeah.
And, you are what you think and you think what you're aware of. So my mindfulness is around just not consuming a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I'm probably watched everything on Netflix, Hulu, and on HBO Max at this rate.
Yeah.
I need more distractions from the news.
Yeah.
Well, Denise, I want to thank you, and I want to get to what's your work fit, and then we'll point people to where they can find you. So, on our very first episode of What's Your Work Fit in October 2022, we had you on with Dr. Charles Glassman, my dear friend, and I asked you both the question: what's your work fit? What attribute, condition,
Mm.
place, state of mind makes work a wonderful part of the day, doing other wonderful things? And here's the
Mm.
here's the operative thing: not the all-consuming time suck of a day. So back in October 2022, here's what you said. Denise, my friend, what's your work fit?
A big shift I made was I no longer look at my work day as like 8 to 6, 9 to 5, like this time box.
Yeah.
I get up in the morning, I do something physical to wake up my body. I breathe and stretch and meditate to focus my mind, to get to a center point. And then I set 3 goals for the day. These are the 3 things I want to accomplish today. And then I just let the day roll.
Anything change in that?
Oh my God. I don't remember saying that, but that is how I run my days. I was able to follow through on the majority of that by focusing on my habits, which I think is hugely important, but it's very cool to see.
So I am hopeful that we can get some of our friends to reach out to you to learn more about Sway Workplace. Before we do that, if you could just give, I never asked you about Sway and what its mission is and how you help its members. I'm wondering if you could do that first.
Yeah, of course. So Sway is a learning and development company, and we partner with enterprise to deliver the skill of relational intelligence, which is the idea of training of teams on how we reimagine how we connect with one another, how do we actually communicate, how do we actually collaborate and build relationships and social capital in the digital age. Because we believe we can solve for that. We solve for the reason why there's any resistance to flexibility.
I'm glad you brought up the relational intelligence. I had a list of 40 things to ask you, and that was one of them. So I'm glad you covered off. Of relational intelligence, you said, and I quote, "I've been researching and working on this concept, which is based on the premise that the nature of how we communicate determines the quality of our relationships, which determines the quality of our lives." Carve that in granite, my friend. You've just described work fit. That's it. We're on the same page here. That's wonderful.
It's key. It is so key. And I think like that, working flexibly simply means we develop relationships differently, and we have to reset that. And once we reset that, we're off to the races. This just becomes the way that we work.
So where do people find you on social media? How also do they get in touch with you?
The best way is on LinkedIn. I read my DMs. You can follow or connect to me LinkedIn or shoot me a message there. And then we can always pick up a conversation and direct to anything from there. But I also do a lot of my thought leadership on LinkedIn as well. It's a great platform.
That is absolutely wonderful. My friend, namaste. Thank you so much. This has been a great start to 2024. I know we'll be in touch and certainly offering commentary throughout the year of how this year towards getting unstuck evolves.
And the two last things I want to say quick, Dan, is one is I'm very grateful for you for hosting these conversations for these last several years and driving this conversation forward. You can't do it without you. Your work is incredibly important. And the last thing I want to say, end on, is this idea of flexibility is already here. Do not be dissuaded by people who tell you otherwise. It is already here. Embrace it, embody it, fight for it.
And on that note, thank you so much.
Till the next time.